you all, what I say may be a little different from what some others have been saying. It's interesting to pick up a situation where just before the Buddha passed away, a certain person came and asked a question. He asked, there are so many other systems of meditation in the world, and there are others also who claim to be, some even claiming to be fully enlightened or all-knowing, Sabbanyu, knowing everything. And I want to know what you say about whether there are enlightened people in these other systems of meditation. That was the question. So the Buddha said, I don't want to speak about other people or other methods of meditation. I can only speak about my method of meditation. And that is that as long as the noble, what is called the Noble Eightfold Path, is followed, the world will not be short of arahants. That was his answer. So in other words, according to the Buddha, the only way to reach that state of perfection is the Noble Eightfold Path. I have been trying to understand the original teachings of the Buddha. Now why I do this is that when I was born in Sri Lanka, where there is Thera form of Buddhism. But I found that there are so many other forms of Buddhism in the world. There is the Mahayana, there is the Tibetan Vajrayana, and also divisions even in those different forms of Buddhism. So I was not satisfied with the form of Buddhism I was born into. I was not even satisfied with just being a Buddhist. I wanted to know the truth about things. So I tried to study all kinds of religions, philosophies, and even modern psychology, and various things I studied to find out. In my early stages, I only read books about Buddhism, but later I came across the sutras and I began to study the sutras. It is when I began to read the sutras preserved by the Theravadins, not the Mahayana sutras, that I began to see a completely different thing here. And I thought this has to be the teaching of the Buddha. throw it away. At this time, I was also a student studying science, and I had got into the scientific way of thinking. And so, I was not satisfied by just believing things on faith, blind faith. And so, when I began to practice this relaxation that was there, I began to experience something that made me feel this has to be the teaching of the Buddha. Because I got into something, maybe something like what is called samadhi. But the problem is most people today, the translators who translated into English, translated samadhi as concentration. But here, I was not doing any concentration. What I practiced was relaxation. So when I began to experience this thing called relaxation, I thought this has to be the real samadhi. Concentration is not the thing. But it was after this that I came across that sutra called the Satipatthana Sutra, which was, of course, translated into English. And when I read that, I thought, here, what I was just practicing is this. So, although I was just practicing the relaxation, I felt that I had been practicing Satipatthana. So, I became more and more interested in this, and so ultimately, I suppose that is how I became a monk, ultimately. But the thing is, I was not interested in just thinking that the correct form of Buddhism is Thera Buddhism. No. I wanted to know the real Buddhism. So I studied the history of Buddhism. And when I studied the history, I began to realize that the real pure teaching of the Buddha remained in the world only for about 100 years. After 100 years, Buddhism began to split. First it split into two, Theravada and Mahasamgika. It was the Mahasamgika that ultimately became Mahayana. And then the Mahasamgika also started dividing into many schools. And the Theravada also began to divide into many schools. And when the time of Asoka, who was the emperor of India at that time, that was about 300 years after the Buddha. There were 18 schools of Buddhism, which means 18 ways of interpreting the teachings of the Buddha. So that is quite clear that by that time, the real pure teaching of the Buddha was not there. People were beginning to interpret in various ways. So I tried to study these different interpretations. What are these different schools trying to talk about? And I found that these different 18 schools are not really 18 ways of interpreting, but the divisions have been only in the Theravada form. They had broken up into just about 4 or 5. And each school had a different Abhidharma, what is called Abhidharma. So Abhidharma was really the interpretation of that particular school. Today, of course, what we call Theravada is that school of Buddhism called Vipassana. Because during the time of Asoka, the leader of the Vipassana school of Theravada Buddhism managed to, with the confidence of Asoka, and disrobed all the other monks who were not Vipassana. So what remained as Theravada was only the Vipassana. And it was that Vipassana that came to Sri Lanka. And it is from Sri Lanka that went to Burma, Thailand, Cambodia and places like that. So I don't want to make that statement public because people will be against me for that, saying that. But if anyone wants to find out, I can show what is found in the history, how it happened. So the important thing is that I tried to, one important thing that happened was that although the Theravada Buddhists had been interpreting the teachings in these different ways by making use of the Abhidharma and what are called the commentaries. These, they managed to preserve the original teachings in the form of sutras. So the sutras were the original teachings, although the Abhidharma and the commentaries distort that or misinterpret that. So today, I find the world is fairly advanced because of modern scientific research and things like that. And if you study the modern ideas and then read the sutras, you begin to see the meaning of the sutras in a different way. So that is how I began to understand the sutras. And so this is just a little history about this. Our topic is mainly about the method of meditation. And when I examine these different kinds of meditation available today, I saw that all what are called insight meditation Vipassana meditation, which is of course coming from the Thera tradition. They are all based on the book called Vipassana, which is today translated as the Path of Purity. And that Vipassana is taken to be the authority on meditation. And I find that the Vipassana is not really teaching the original teachings of the Buddha. When I compare sutras, it's very different. So I want to find out the real Vipassana by studying the sutras, and not only just reading the sutras and interpreting that. I also began to practice this. And it is by practicing that I began to gradually begin to understand more and more about this. And when I compare my practice with some of the others who have been practicing the other forms of meditation, I began to see a difference. So I didn't go to argue with all these different people. I only formed my own concepts and then I let them have their own ways. Because people don't like other people trying to find fault with their methods. So what is the use of just quarreling? So, but when I teach meditation, I teach the method that I have been following myself and also what I think is the right method. Now, after saying all these things, you will understand that ultimately the method of the Buddha has to be what is called the Noble Eightfold Path. That's all. And what today people call meditation, at least those who practice what is called Vipassana meditation, they are mainly talking about what is called Satipatthana. Of course, they have their own method of understanding the Satipatthana Sutra. And that sutra begins by saying, Ekayano ayam bhikkhave maggo. Ekayano is translated as the only way. This is the only way to bring all suffering to an end. That is how we translate that. If that is the only way, and if you compare that with the what is called the Noble Eightfold Path, that is only the Satipatthana is just the seventh factor in the Noble Eightfold Path. There are 8 factors. Out of the 8 factors, the 7th factor is the Satipatthana. And that is called the only way. So how can that be the only way if the only way was the Noble Eightfold Path? So what I thought was, there is something wrong with that. So I went into the Pali dictionaries and Pali scholars. I went and discussed this and found that Ekayana Magga doesn't mean only way. Eka ayana. Eka means one. Ayana means going towards. single focus or a single aim. So when I thought about this, something came to my mind, which is a common game that we have today here. Even in this country, we have that game, which is called golf. You know the golf game. And there, the ultimate aim is to put this small ball into a hole. And you have to put that into that small hole. But you can't just go and put it into the hole, but you have to take this miles away, start far away, and then keep hitting this ball so many times, and ultimately only when it comes very close to that hole, then you can hit just one shot and it goes to the goal, the hole. So I thought this Noble Eightfold Path is a thing like that. You have to start with what is called Samma Ditti. Samma Ditti means, usually translated as right understanding. And once you have understood, then you go to the next step, which is, I of course call it the right orientation. The right orientation means that you are turning now. Say you are going in a car or someplace, you are searching for something, and someone points out that you are going the wrong way. So you turn back, maybe, and go in a different direction. So like that, the second step is to turn in a different direction. Because now you have seen how to go. Because with your first knowledge, you have understood the right direction. Okay? And then that is why I call it the right orientation. And once that has been done, you begin to behave in the right way, right speech, right action, and right way of living. So your behavior begins to change. You know, there is a modern book written by a plastic surgeon. I don't want to go into the details, but the most important thing is the author is Maxwell Maltz. The name of the book is Cybernetics. And there he points out that the importance of the goal orientation. And the goal has to be in the form of a self-image. So that is also called self-image psychology. This self-image is very important in the teachings of the Buddha. Because when you have understood properly, the self-image changes. That is the meaning of Sakkaya Ditti. I translate it as personality perspective. That means your personality is simply your self-image. about yourself. You think I am like this. And that image, now I don't want to go too much into modern psychology, but there is this thing called the inferiority complex. And that inferiority complex is that simply during childhood, we are all helpless. We are helpless, powerless. And then we begin to think, oh, when I grow up, I will be able to do this, I will be able to do that. And then the most powerful people who are protecting you is your mother and father. So whenever you are in trouble, you run to your father or mother. You see, because of this, people carry in their mind that you are inferior. From childhood, you feel you are inferior. And ultimately, your goal is to become superior. So, the goal that you want to achieve is a superior goal. And that superior goal is the same thing that we do in the practice of Buddhism. You see, we are thinking of the Buddha. We want to, the superior goal is to become a Buddha. The Buddha represents our goal. And so we worship the Buddha. What does that mean? We recognize the superiority of the Buddha. What he has achieved, his achievement, is seen as something very superior. And so, because we recognize that we are inferior, we want to attain to that superior state. So that worship is the expression of our need or desire to attain to that state of perfection, where all suffering comes to an end. All bad behavior comes to an end. So once we have been oriented in the proper way, seeking the proper goal, then our behavior changes. This is what that Maxwell was a plastic surgeon. He realized when his job was to operate on women mainly to make the face look better or make women more beautiful. So he found that some women, when the operation has been done, the whole personality changes. Because now a new self-image is formed. Now I am beautiful. When that self-image is formed, that person's personality changes, character changes. But then he found some women, even after the operation, the personality has not changed. So he brought these women and pointed out, you look beautiful, why you are still thinking that you are not beautiful? And once that person has been convinced, the personality changes again. And then he tried another experiment. When a person came for the operation, he said, you don't need an operation. You are very beautiful. So what is called a sotapanna or stream enterer is a person whose self-image has changed. But it's not completely changed because that idea of self has completely disappeared. And the problem is that we have in our mind, which is recognized by modern psychologists also, that we have two parts of our mind. One is the thinking part, and the other is the emotional part. Modern psychologists call this thinking part the cognitive part, and the emotional part is called the affective. The cognitive and the affective. But before that, Sigmund Freud used two other words. The emotional part he called the id, id. And the thinking part he called the ego. Why he used those terms, I can explain, but it takes time, so I'll cut short that. If you are interested, you can ask later. The important thing is that modern psychologists have been recognizing this. And what is happening is that, say, the Buddhists recite the 5 precepts and take up the 5 precepts. What does that mean? That you should not hurt others, you should not steal, you should not commit adultery, you should not lie, you should not use harsh language and that sort of thing. Now that is done by the thinking part. It is the thinking part that accepts that is right. I should not hurt others, I should not speak bad words to others. I should be very kind, compassionate towards others. You accept that. But then, the moment you get angry, what happens? All that is broken. Or you become greedy for things. Because when the emotion comes up, and the emotion and reason are in conflict, who wins? Emotion always wins. This is the problem. Now this is the problem that even Sigmund Freud discovered. Now this is why in Buddhism we have a word called vicitticca. And today the modern psychologists are aware of this, that the mind is pulling in 2 different directions. The thinking part pulls in one direction, the emotional part pulls in the other direction. So this is why we can't decide on things. When we become undecided over things, you will observe that the thinking part is pulling in one direction and the emotional part is pulling in the other direction. This is the problem. So the important thing is that it is only when we become aware of this that we can put a stop to this. Because these things are happening unconsciously. You are not even aware of this. But the moment you become conscious step is the orientation, which means, are you going to be dominated by your emotions, or are you going to be dominated by your reason? That decision is the second step. Because you have understood the problem and how it should be solved, now are you prepared to solve the problem? Which means you have to stop being carried away by your emotions and you have to be going according to your reason. That is also a difficult step to take. Now modern psychologists are aware of this. They call it the cognitive dissonance. Cognitive dissonance means the mind pulling in two different directions. So what you need is the cognitive consonance. Consonance means they are not going in two different directions. So the important thing is, once that has been done, once your direction has been determined, then you begin to speak in the right way, act in the right way, and live in the right way. But once you have done that, there is something further to be done. Now these steps are now 5 steps you have taken, the Noble Eightfold Path. The first is Sammaditthi, right understanding. Then comes the right orientation. Then comes the right speech, right action, and right life. Now that right life is also sometimes translated as the occupation or the job you do. It's not the job. It's your lifestyle, how you live. And then the next step is Samma Vayam, which means the right, I call it the right exercise. Vayam is a word used also sometimes in the Senegalese language. Vayam, Vyayam is exercise. It is really an exercise. Now once you do these physical exercises, like maybe different exercises like weightlifting or anything like that, what happens? You begin to build your muscles and you become strong as a result. So in the same way, if you do these exercises in the proper way, your mind becomes strong. When the mind becomes strong, it is called virya. Virya means strength. What is this exercise? This exercise, there are 4 parts in the exercise. In Pali it's called Samvara, Pahana, Bhavana, Anurakta. Samvara, Pahana, Bhavana, Anurakta. Samvara means preventing emotional thoughts arising in the mind. That is Samvara. Prahana means getting rid of emotional thoughts once they have risen in the mind. That is the Prahana. So we have Samvara and Prahana. Very important. Now in ancient times, like, I won't say ancient, is some during the time of Sigmund Freud. Sigmund Freud thought that these emotions cannot be removed. That these emotions And therefore, he called it instinct. Instinct means it is built into the system, you cannot get rid of it. The only thing that you can do is to take these emotions and send the emotions on a good channel. That is what he calls sublimation. Sublimation was given anger, you can send on a good channel. Or even fear can be sent on a good channel. Or maybe something like sexual desires can be sent on a good channel. So that is what he was thinking about. So if that was true, there cannot be a Buddha. A Buddha is a person who has got rid of all emotions. So this was the problem some time back when I was trying to study these things. But later came a modern school of psychology. They pointed out emotions are not built into the system. We have all the necessary organs in the body to produce the emotions. But the emotion cannot be produced if we don't think in the right way. You see? Now, everyone knows that we have in the body all the organs necessary to produce the sexual desires. Those organs are there. And you also know the organs necessary to produce anger or fear is there in the body. But these psychologists began to realize was these are really not things starting inside, it is starting outside. That means if you see a person with your eyes and then maybe you see that person doing something that you think is wrong, and you, as a result, you become angry. So the anger came because of the way you interpreted what you saw. That's the point. And that interpretation is what is called cognition. So they said it is the way you cognize your situation, your circumstances, that start the emotional arousal. So if you begin to change the way you interpret a certain situation, if you are very angry about some person, it is all because of the way you interpreted whatever that person did. And if you can change that way you interpret, the anger disappears. This is what today there are these psychologists who are called cognitive therapists. That is how their method of therapy is based on changing the way you interpret your circumstances. what the Buddha taught more than 2,500 years before that. The first verse in the Dhammapada, that thinking part the Buddha called Mano, and the emotional part he called Chitta. So the more there in the first verse, the Buddha says, Mano Pubbangama Dhamma. What that means is, Mano is the thinking part, precedes all experience. Manasache paduttena vasativa karotiva. If you interpret it in the wrong way, you will become emotionally excited and start acting according to that, and you create problems for yourself as well as others. But if you interpret in the right way, then your emotions will be changed and you begin to act in the proper way. This is very important thing. Now this is the secret that is being used here in this right effort or right practice or the right exercise. So the first thing is to realize that all our bad emotions are derived from what is going on outside. And not only what is going on outside, how we interpret. That's the important thing. And so we have this exercise called Indriya Samvara. Indriya Samvara is today translated as guarding the senses. Guarding the senses means you guard the senses. Means when you see something, you don't think how good it is or how bad it is. When you hear something, you don't think how good it is or bad it is. When you smell something, you don't think about what a pleasant smell or what an ugly smell. When you taste something, you don't think about the pleasantness or the unpleasantness. When you touch something, you don't think about the pleasantness or the unpleasantness. That is guarding the senses. And the next one is, if there is an emotional thought already in the mind, you must know how to get rid of it. And that is, every emotion that is present in your mind always carries a mental picture. If you are angry with a person, the picture of that person is there. If you are in love with a person, again there is a picture there. Always the picture is controlling your emotions. So what you have to do is to take your attention away from that picture and focus on something else. This is what usually mothers do when the children begin to cry. When the child is crying, what does the mother do? Mother carries the child and shows, oh, look at this. It's a nice flower or a nice picture. Or maybe a doll or something like that. You see, change the picture. That's automatically done. But the thing is, that is the main principle behind this. Change the picture. So, this is the important thing that the Buddha taught. And of course, there are sutras, there are like the Vipassana Sutra gives you about 10 methods of taking your mind away from these images. And so the important thing is to take your mind away from that image. Mental images are dominating our mind. So it's very important to keep the right images in the mind. To be free from worries. If you are worried about something, always there is a mental image. Take that mental image out. And of course, when it is very difficult, what you have to do is to go and talk to a friend. The moment you go and talk to a friend, now the image is different. So that is how we can change. Now that is the second part, samvara and pahana. Pahana is to get rid of the images. If you can practice those two things properly, you can purify your mind and you can attain the first jhana. Because the first jhana is nothing but purity of mind, not concentration. This is purity of mind. And the other thing is, the third one is bhavana. It's called bhavana. Bhavana is cultivating good thoughts in the mind. What are the good thoughts? The good thoughts are the calming thoughts. The bad thoughts are the emotional thoughts. The good thoughts are the calming thoughts. When you have the calming thoughts in your mind, you become happy in your mind, and also the body relaxes. All the tensions in the body relax. And when the tensions relax, your whole body becomes comfortable. It's like just immediately after a bath, you feel relaxed and comfortable. That's because the muscles are relaxed. That's all. So like that. But there are 7 things to be practiced. And that is what is called the bojjhangas. Usually translated as the parts of awakening or something like that. But I would call that the 7 steps to awakening. The 7 steps to awakening. And the first step is satipatthana. That is the point where we enter the satipatthana, or what is called mindfulness. But I don't call it mindfulness. It's not just mindfulness. It is what is called introspection. Your mind turns inwards and looking at what is going on inside your mind, not what is going on outside. That's another thing that most meditators don't know. Satipatthana is not just mindfulness, it is introspection. Looking inwards. What are you introspecting? That is important to understand. What you are really introspecting is when you look at something, if you think it is pleasant, you are attracted to it. Emotional attraction. If you think it is unpleasant, you are repelled by it. That is also an emotional reaction. But now you have taken your attention away from it. Although you have taken your attention away from it, that reaction that was just that at the start is still going on. And so you look at that reaction first in the form of the physical manifestation of the reaction. If it is a desire, like say for example, a young man walking on the road sees a good-looking girl, what happens? You have to observe inside to see what has happened to my body. Your body also has changed. That is called Vipassana, looking at the body. Then, what do you feel in the body? Is it a pleasant sensation or an unpleasant sensation? Becoming aware of that is called Vipassana. How you feel in the body. What is the emotion that has been aroused? That emotion is whether it is lust or whether it is anger or whether it is fear. That is the emotion. That is called Vipassana. Then you look at the idea that arose in the mind, or how you interpreted what you saw. That is what is called Vipassana. Dhamma doesn't mean here the teachings of the Buddha. Dhamma here means the concept, the idea. How you interpreted your situation. Becoming aware of that thing that was going on, which was your reaction, is an unconscious process. But the moment you become aware of it, it becomes a conscious thing. You have become conscious of the unconscious process that was going on. This is something that Sigmund Freud saw. Making the unconscious conscious. That's what he wanted to do. But here, the whole secret behind this is that. So the moment you become conscious of this, that process stops. It cannot continue consciously. It can go on only unconsciously. So when you have stopped that, you have got strength. That strength is what is called virya. So by practicing this exercise properly, you have now got the strength to stop the emotions, reactions. That is called virya. The first step was sati, which was the introspection. Then Dhamma Vichar means you have understood the concept that started this. Once you understand that, you drop the concept. And then you get the strength to stop the emotion. And then, once you have done that, your mind is cleared now and you feel happy. That happiness is free. Your mind is free of emotions. You are happy. Free. When the mind becomes happy, the body tensions disappear. The body relaxes. That is called passaddhi. Passaddhi means relaxation. And with that comes samadhi, means you enter fourth jhana. It is when you are working to the fourth jhana, you have what is called upekka. That word upekka is a very important word that today is very badly translated. Some translate it as equanimity, but this is not equanimity. Upa ikkati, upa means inside, ikkati means seeing it from inside. I was trying to find a word for this. And I found the word. It is a word that is being used by certain philosophers like Immanuel Kant and people like that. It is seeing things from inside. That is called, normally we see things from outside, like perception, seeing something from outside. But this is seen from inside. It is called apperception. That word is apperception. What this means is when you are looking at something, like say I look at this cushion here, I see a cushion there. But that is seen from outside. What I am seeing from inside is how I see the cushion. How do I see the cushion? Of course, we know that light falls on the cushion and the light comes to my eye and I am able to form a picture. The eye works like a camera. It's a picture. So what I really see is not the cushion there, but a picture. A picture of the cushion. You see, now that is seen from inside. How I see it. Now that process of seeing from inside has been analyzed by Buddha. Today it is called the five aggregates. Even that word aggregate, I don't like, that is not the real meaning of it. It is the process of perception. It is the process of perception. What we see is called rupa. Rupa means the mental image. Rupa, it doesn't mean an object. It's a mental image. Rupa. And Vedana means the feeling. And Sanya means really something like the color what I see. When I open my eyes, I only see colors. That's the first thing to understand. I don't see objects. Because there are these nerve endings in the what's called the retina, which can receive only certain frequencies of light. There are 7 frequencies: violet, indigo, blue, green, yellow, orange, red. So what I really see is color. But I take those colors, put them together, and I see there is a face. Now, when I say I see a face, that is my creation. And that creation of that object is what is called sankhara. So we have rupa, vedana, sanya, sankhara. And then I see not only one object, many objects. And so to differentiate between one object and another object, that is what is called vijnana. So in other words, what I am really seeing is the process of perception. But that process of perception is personalized. What do you mean by personalized? I call it mind. That seeing seeing is mind. The object is something outside, but the seeing is mind. I see. So the moment I personalize that seeing, I come into being. That is the meaning of bhava. That personalizing is called upadana. Upadana is not just clinging and grasping. Upadana is personalizing. And so I begin to see. So when I see this, what I see is there is no real self here to talk about. I am creating the self here. When you begin to understand this fully, you awaken from the dream of existence. That means we are thinking that things are existing. I am existing, the world exists, everything exists in the world. That is what is called bhava. Nirvana is called bhava nirodha. Bhava nirodho nirvana. I am awakening from the dream of existence. That is how you become awakened from the dream of existence. That is becoming Buddha. So that is the end of the process of meditation. You see, after sati comes samadhi. So sati is that ultimate, like the golf game, the ultimate step where you hit the ball for it to go straight into the hole. That is the meaning of sati. Not the only way. It is the ultimate way. Ultimate step. So I think I have said enough today.
I just want to ask Bhante, just one question. Explain what is Vipassana in one or two sentences.
Well, I would say there are these two kinds of meditation, what is called samatha and vipassana. Now in that exercise I said there are two things, samvara and pahana. The samvara and the pahana means preventing emotional thoughts coming into the mind and getting rid of emotional thoughts once they have arisen in the mind. If you practice those two things, that is what is samatha meditation. Then the other two things is bhavana and anurakana. Bhavana means you start with the satipatthana, and anurakana means to constantly preserve that introspection. You have to be introspective all the time. That is the anurakana. Not just introspective, just few minutes and then start. It's always introspective. So that is when you do those two things. That means when you are practicing sati, dhamma, vicaya, virya, piti, passaddhi, samadhi, upekka, the seven steps to awakening. That is what is called vipassana. But the common vipassana that we see people practicing something completely